Well, sir, Todd Hall, thank you so much for being here in Zona Franca channel. My name is Alexander, and what I do is try to promote the metal music in my country, in Peru. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Well, hello, my name is Todd Michael Hall, and I'm the singer for a band called Riot V.
My friend, how Riot 5 was started, and why did you call Riot 5? I know back in the day it was called Riot, but why now Riot 5?
Well, essentially what happened is, Riot, and most people really around the world just know us as Riot. But, so originally Riot started out around 1975, but the first album came out in 1977. And there's been quite a few different versions of Riot. They've had actually 5 different lead singers. I'm the 5th singer. But in 2012, the one person who was in all the versions of Riot, Mark Reale, he passed away. And so what happened is when Donnie Van Staveren, who met Mark and worked with him as far back as the early 80s, and then Mike Flintz, who's been in the band since '89, when they decided to continue, one of the things because they were really close with Tony Reale, Mark Reale's dad, and one of the things they talked about out of respect to Mark was to add the 5, which we do with a Roman numeral V. So a lot of people think it's Riot V, yeah, but it's actually Riot 5, and just to kind of signify a different chapter of the band. But when we play around the world, most people are like, Riot, Riot, they still call us Riot. We tend to be mostly based out of what I would call the power metal era of Riot, but we do play, songs off Fire Down Under and Rock City and some of the other old albums as well.
And now that you said that you are the 5th singer in the band, how do you feel about that? Like, do you feel some pressure on your shoulders because maybe the audience wants to listen a particular voice of the previous singer, or maybe you say, okay, I have to do better than the singer before me? How do you feel?
Yeah, for me, I don't view it as competitive. Mm-hmm. I'm not necessarily worried about trying to sing better. For me, I think of it more from the fan perspective. I feel like the fans, the older songs are things that they've grown to love, and they're used to hearing it the way it is. And so my goal is to try to produce the song and make it sound as much like the original as possible. I know with some singers, they try to change it up and do things different. I don't have any interest in doing that because I feel like the fans, they want to hear it the way they want to hear it. That's the way I think. So for me, I feel like it's kind of like almost like a responsibility on my shoulders to do it and do it as well as I can. As far as, I don't really worry about what people think because, well, first of all, 2 of the singers passed away, and so they're not even here to do it anymore, so you can't have them. And then Tony Moore, he's in his 60s, and not that he's much older than me, but he is a little older than me, about 8 years or so. And he has no interest in doing it anymore. I've even invited him to come play with us when we're in LA, and it's not really, so he's not available. And Mike DeMeo, who was in the 4th version of Riot, I thought I had heard that his voice was a little more tired nowadays and he wasn't as able to sing, but I'm not real certain. I thought that's what I was told. But so I don't think people have a lot of options other than me. It's either that or nothing, right? So what can you do? But I do take it seriously. I try to sound as much like them as I can. I think I can sound pretty decently like Guy Speranza and Tony Moore. I don't think I sound much like Rhett Forrester, but I try to dirty up my voice what little I can, when I sing Restless Breed or something. And Mike DeMeo, yeah, his tone's a little different than mine too, but I do my best.
Right. And of course, being in Riot 5, I know that there might be some ups and downs, and you learn from the downs, or the failures, let's say. So with that experience, what advices you can say to the bands that are just coming up nowadays?
Yeah, I mean it's it's tough. First of all, I mean I think it's just tough in music in general nowadays. Um, but one thing you have to understand is I come from the perspective of someone who's older, and so I'm used to doing, when I started recording in the 80s, I mean it was on tape,
Mm.
and in a studio. And so things have changed a lot. It was all about record labels and getting on a record label, and nowadays things are so much different. So I think younger people nowadays, they're more used to what they're used to. So to them, it doesn't feel different. So, getting advice from an old timer like me, maybe isn't as helpful. I think it's tough to earn a living with music. I think the most important thing in my mind is just to be passionate about what you do. I think if you're always chasing after something, you're gonna have difficulty feeling satisfied. My other recommendation would be not to try to compare yourself to others, because it's easier said than done, because I still do it myself, but when you do something, there's an expression that comparison is the surest way to kill joy. And the reality is there's always going to be someone faster, better, smarter, someone with more money. There's always going to be, you know what I mean? I mean, unless you're Elon Musk, maybe, then you got the most money. But, so I think you just have to be careful with the comparisons. I mean, I think you should strive for more. But, ultimately, I think with music, it comes down to, am I really happy with what I've created? Does the music sing to me, and do I really enjoy my music? And then obviously as a musician, you hope to reach people. And I think in some regard, you can maybe take a lesson from the Christian faith. I mean, in the Christian faith, they say that if you can influence one person and get them to turn toward God, that you've been a big success. And I think, well, why not learn that? I mean, I think the idea is that you want to touch people, and with your music, I mean, like, I'm touched by music that I listen to and have listened to in the past. And I'd like to be able to do that same thing for other people. And if it's only a small handful, it's more than zero. So,
Yes.
it's better. So I think that's what helps. Just put things in perspective and try not to be too upset. So I'm not saying don't shoot for massive success. But it just depends on how you define success, and don't be unhappy if you don't hit that high level.
Do you think nowadays someone can live by doing, let's say, metal music? For example, I am asking you that because here in Peru is way too difficult. I don't know if where you live it is easier. I don't know.
I would say, no. I mean, it doesn't. So it really depends. So for me personally, that was never my thing. I did really well in high school, and I actually graduated valedictorian of my class. So I was the top person in my class in high school. So I decided I would go on to college and try to, even though I wanted to be in a band, and I was in a band, but I thought, well, I better get college done first. So I went to college and I got my business degree. And then unfortunately, when I graduated college, it was 1991, and the music scene all changed. Everything went to grunge. And so my days of being a heavy metal rock star disappeared. And in my opinion, it hasn't really ever been the same since. Here in the US, especially for heavy metal, the market is quite a bit different than it is abroad. Especially like the power metal style that, say, we do with Riot. Now, if you are, there are some forms of metal in the US that can be pretty popular. I would call them more the screamo or, type of stuff. And then there are some bands that break through that are melodic. Like you look at a band like Ghost. I don't know if I consider them heavy metal, but they're at least hard rock. So there are some bands that break through like that, but yeah, it's few and far between. But so I mean, I think success can be had, but I think the odds of you having success in a way that you can base your life on it and make a living, that's pretty tough, especially because you might do well for a few years, but then, so, what are the odds you're going to make millions and millions of dollars, like I look at, options for me, I mean, I've, I run a family business that my dad started in 1969. I've been working here since 1984 when I was 14 years old. So, I mean, I'm very established in my career, and I'm very blessed because I'm established in my career, it gives me the ability to take 3 weeks off in May to go play some shows in Europe, and we're supposed to, have a tour of South America in September. So I'm able to take another 3 weeks off for that, and stuff like that. But it can be tough, to be in a band here, because to find, you can't make enough money, so you need to have a job, and then you need to have a job that's flexible enough to allow you to leave if you need to go leave to play shows, or you got to quit your job to go play shows, and that's pretty tough. And if you're going to play original music, it's hard to make much money. And then some people then resort to playing cover tunes, or they be in a tribute band, and you can make decent money doing that, but it just depends on what kind of lifestyle you want and stuff too. Like, I think for me, what brings me joy in music is performing for people, for sure, but also performing my own songs, So we played in South America back in 2016, and I remember playing in like Colombia and Paraguay and some places where people were singing the lyrics to Take Me Back from Unleash the Fire back to me, and that's the song that I wrote. Now, to me, that gives me great joy, because it's not, English isn't even their first language, and they're singing back to me. So that to me is more my motivation. Like, I don't, I think Journey's a great band, but I wouldn't want to make my living by being in a Journey tribute band, because it's not my music. It's not, you know what I mean? I mean, it'd be fun to play for people, but to be gone from my family every weekend and traveling and touring and all that just to play Journey songs, I mean, to me, that's not what I want to do. I'm not saying someone else is stupid for doing that, but for me personally, that's not what I want to do.
And there is something that you, as a musician, haven't accomplished yet?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, so that's the one thing I would say. You look at Riot, and sometimes people talk about Riot as kind of having, the periods where they've been unlucky and stuff like that. What's interesting is I've been in Riot just over 10 years now. So actually, tomorrow is the 10-year anniversary. February 8th is the 10-year anniversary of my first show with Riot, which was in Brescia, Italy. And I know because Google popped up on my phone. It sent me a picture. It said, "Look at this." And so I shared it with the guys. We have a group text, and said, "My God, 10 years ago." So I look at Riot, and I agree Riot has had some ups and downs, but for me personally, I've been in Riot for 10 years, and it really blossomed, for me musically. I mean, I think we've rejuvenated Riot. There's been a fair amount of desire to have us play shows in the US and all over abroad. And for me, it led to more opportunities to do a lot of like bucket list items. I don't know if a bucket list is a phrase you guys are familiar with, but
yeah.
I did a tour bus tour, 25 shows in Europe over the course of 30 days, where we opened up for Primal Fear, and that was the first for me. And so I've played in lots of countries all over the place. So I feel like for me, I mean, even led to me getting motivated to try out for The Voice. I ended up being on national TV on The Voice, 4 years ago. So I mean, just all sorts of stuff happened. I think for me, I don't really, let's put it this way, there are fantasies that I would love to see happen, but I don't have any probably terribly realistic goals that that haven't really happened for me. I mean, I do write some of my own music, and I write solo albums and stuff. I think for me, what I would like is, so my wife is from the northeastern part of India, right?
Oh, wow.
So, she's from really far away. We met as pen pals. I've been to India like 23 times.
Yes, I bet.
We met way back in 93, and I remember flying there for the first time to meet her in 1996. And the reason I explain all this to you is, when I would fly there for a few years, her family lived in Kathmandu, Nepal. And when I would walk around the touristy area of Kathmandu, Nepal, you would hear music playing, right? And I would hear Dust in the Wind by Kansas, or you'd hear Paradise City by, Guns N' Roses, or something by Aerosmith. And to me, that would be the ultimate for me, is to write a song that's so good and touches people so much that decades later they're playing it even in foreign countries where they don't speak English. Now that's one thing that I have not accomplished that I would love to do, but I don't have a realistic feel that will happen. But that would be the one thing I'd love to see happen.
Yes, that's true. I think like for me, something that I like about Riot 5 also is the lyrics, the meaning of the lyrics. I think like, well, I want to ask you, who write the lyrics?
It kind of depends. So like the first two Riot 5 albums, I wrote basically 8 out of the 12 songs, the lyrics. On this newest album, I think I wrote lyrics to 6 of the 12 songs. So, really for music, we have 2 primary writers in the band. One is Donnie, the bass player, and the other one is Mike, the guitar player. And Donnie usually writes the most. But I think on this newest album, Mike is pretty close. I think they are 50-50. He has 6 songs. And Donnie will sometimes write his own lyrics. But then sometimes I write lyrics on his songs also. And then with Mike, I generally write all the lyrics for Mike's songs. So it depends on the song, but I do write a fair amount of lyrics.
There are some projects that you have, like, that you would love to have done in the past, but you've never done it?
Oh, you mean like working with other people, or?
No, like something as a musician, I don't know, in your career as a musician, there's something that you said, man, I should have done this, but I don't know, maybe I was too scared to do it.
Yeah. I think for me, like, I never really, I always considered myself a singer and not so much a musician. But I did start playing guitar actually around 1996. So it's been a long time, but that was, early on I was in a band with my brother, and around 1996 we kind of parted ways musically. He wanted me to, he was really into Pantera, and he wanted me to start singing like Phil, and I have no ability to sing like that. So I told him he should find another singer, and so obviously we still loved each other, but we parted ways musically. And at the time I started, I thought, well, I still have motivation, so I'm gonna take guitar lessons, and I picked up guitar. I had piano lessons when I was younger. And I actually wrote a few songs in the 90s. They were mostly little love songs for my to-be wife. She wasn't my wife yet, but I never really dreamed that I would have a solo album or write like an album with the songs and all that. But in 2017, I ended up releasing a solo album of very, very mellow love songs, basically, that I wrote for my wife. The album was called Letters from India, and it was basically an ode to my wife. And I released it just mostly locally, but I sold some internationally. But I released it, and the proceeds went to a local charity. But after that, I got more motivated, and I wrote more songs. I wrote about 30 more songs after that, and I released some other solo albums that were light pop. And then I've also been hooked up with Kurt Vanderhoof from Metal Church, and I released kind of a hard rock solo album in 2021 called Sonic Healing. And he and I have since written another album that'll be coming out later this year too. And so, like, to me, those are things where the notion of me releasing a solo album, if you'd asked me 10 years ago even, I would have been like, wow, no, I don't think so. But now I've got my 5th one going to come out this year. So that, I would say that to me is probably a big thing that and so the interesting thing for me, and I think that would go to your maybe younger viewers or anybody out there, is like, you just don't know, because you can still learn and you can still grow. And and things can change, because I would have never thought that would have happened. Like when I was younger, my brother wrote the music, I wrote lyrics and melodies. I never really wrote the music, and so this notion that this thinking of me as a musician and writing the music too, that's kind of a newer phenomenon for me.
Nice. And now that now we are in the 2024, what are the goals for Riot 5, and what is the vision of Riot 5 this year?
Yeah. Well, this should be a good year for us and a busy year. It's taken us a long time, but we finally have our new album coming out. They announced it for February, but then quickly moved it back, so it comes out April 12th. And we have 2 videos out. So the first one was a lyric video for a song called High Noon, and then we've also released kind of a live action video, I guess you'd call it, for the song Feel the Fire. And both songs seem to be getting a good response. And what we'd really like to do is get out, play some shows for sure. So we've got an 11 show tour lined up in May, the first couple weeks of May, and then I believe we're supposed to go to Japan in July. And then I think we have some, it's not for sure yet, but I think there was about 13 shows lined up in various countries in South America.
Nice.
And that's in September. So we're definitely really excited about that. And I think there are, usually when the summer rolls around, there's lots of festivals in Europe. So I think there'll be some other opportunities there as well. So I think that's our goal, just to try to get out and play some shows and play the new album and just have more fun. I think at this point the guys are starting to wonder, well, how much longer can we do this, and how much longer will Riot go, so we'll see.
I mean, if Judas Priest still going on, you can,
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I don't know if people understand, like, it's really a passion project for us, I mean, it's not a big money maker. Yeah, there's a little bit of money here and there, but it's not really about the money. It's about the notion of reaching people with music, about carrying on the Riot legacy, about the excitement of performing in front of a crowd. And it's a little hard to describe, but when you're playing in front of a crowd, whether it can be 50 people, or it can be 500, or it can be 5,000. But if they're pressed up to the stage and their fists are in the air and they're singing along with you, it just, it really warms your heart, and that's why we do it, so I think as long as people are, asking us to come play and want to hear us play, we'll probably do our best to get out there and make it happen.
You said a word that I really like, legacy. So my question is, what is a legacy that you would like to leave to the fans the day that you say, okay, this is done?
Well, I think for me, the reason I mention the word legacy a lot is because, I feel like we have this responsibility with the Riot legacy. Riot's been around for a long time. There's a lot of great music there. And there's a lot of musicians that have been in the band. Like 30 different musicians, I think, there's been a lot of different musicians in the band. And that's right from the get-go. After the first album, there was different musicians, some of them, and I think for me, I really take that seriously, that notion of playing the music that people grew up with and loved, and playing it as true to the form as possible, and that sort of thing, but also the notion of trying to continue on. Mark Reale was always like that. Members would come and go, and he would always work with people, and a lot of times the music would change, because if the singer had a different style, he would change his writing style a little bit, to work with that singer. But it was all rooted in this notion of just great music, and reaching people and touching people with, with music and great melodies. One of the things that I think is really interesting for me is, part of why I feel like I'm kind of meant to be in Riot, so to speak, is, first of all, my voice seems to fit really well with the music. It feels like, the music was written for me. But also, if I go all the way back to the first album, Rock City, and there's a song on there called Warrior, and the chorus of it says, shine, shine on through the darkness and the pain. And so to me, Riot, has always been a band that's been about I had a positiveness to them, you know, and I think in terms of my personal legacy, I mean, I think that's what I would want. I mean, I want to feel like I shine a positive light that brings joy into people's lives, and you know, that would be the legacy I would want. That I was just a good person that, you know, made people feel better about themselves and the world around them, and I feel like that is in line with how Mark Reale was, because you could see right from the get-go he was talking about, you know, these positive concepts like they song about in Warriors. So
I like that. Well, my friend, this is the last question, and you have to be very honest, okay?
All right, I'll do my best.
If you have one day left on the earth, with which artist, dead or alive, and what song, any kind of song like pop, rock, metal, jazz, whatever you would like to play with?
Wow, that's a tough one. Well, I mean, I think realistically, if I only had one day left, I'd probably want to spend that day with my family. But if there were an artist, you know, I would say for me, I mean, as corny as it might sound, I think to have another day to spend with my brother. My brother John passed away in 2020.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. But he's the one that really got me into music in the first place. So I would probably, but if I had to pick someone who is living, geez, I don't even know. That's a tough one. I would probably, it's so hard because the problem I have is like, I might be tempted to say someone like Jeff Tate, right? Because he was such a huge influence on me as a singer. But I don't know that as a person, and I'm not saying he's a bad person or anything. I don't know if as a person our personalities mesh.
Yeah, much.
Yeah, so I don't know what he's like as a person. So in that regard, it's hard for me to, you know, maybe if we got together on my last day, we wouldn't get along and it would be a disaster. You know, I don't know. So that would be the one musician that somebody would know that maybe I would want to spend some time with.
Nice. Well, my friend, thank you so much really for this interview. I really do appreciate what you're doing as a musician, and maybe the artist as you don't notice or will never notice, but what you transmit to me in this case or to the fans is unique. You know, like we are gonna remember this all our lives. And
Well, thank you.
well, no, thank you. Please, would you like to invite all the Peruvian people to listen Riot 5, please?
I would sure do that. Hey, this is Todd Michael Hall from Riot 5. Please listen to our new album. What's it called? Oh, Main Streets. Comes out April 12th. And I think we have some shows coming up in September, so look out for us coming to Peru so we can play live for you.
Thank you, my friend. God bless you.
Hey, God bless you too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.